Good morning to everyone at today's public hearing of the Prosecutor Vetting Commission. My name is Christopher Lehman, Chairperson of the Commission, and I declare this session to be open. The Prosecutor Vetting Commission is established under Law 252 on the external evaluation of judges and prosecutors. Law number 252 establishes that this commission will undertake an ethical and financial evaluation of prosecutors who are identified in Article 3, Paragraph 1 of that law as subjects of the evaluation. This hearing is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of Article 16 of that law, as well as the Commission's rules of procedure for evaluations under Law number 252. The subject of today's hearing is Victor Cazacu, a prosecutor in the Anticorruption Prosecutor's Office. Mr. Cazacu, welcome. I'm joined by seven of my colleagues on the commission. In the room, Virginia Mararu, Vice Chairperson of the Commission, and Jan Grauer, National Member. Joining this panel on the Zoom platform, this commission on the Zoom platform, we have Irmantas Michelonis, Cornel Lebedinsky, Saskia De Vries, and Lara Stefan. I will note for the record, I'm getting some kind of echo again. I don't know what. I'll note for the record, I'm not quite sure what's going on. Virginia, is there a tech person there? Or?
Yes.
When I speak, I'm getting quite an echo. I'll try to continue. Make sure everyone's mics are off. I think that might help. I will note for the record that Commissioner Nadezhda Hryptievsky was recused by the Commission from participating in the evaluation of the subject by decision of the 1st of December 2025. The subject was previously advised in writing of that recusal. I will further note that Commissioner Pierangelo Padova did not participate in the evaluation of this candidate for reasons of personal unavailability and incapacity, of which he has previously notified the Commission and the relevant Moldovan parliamentary authorities. The Commission is also assisted in this case by members of its Secretariat. The hearing is open to the public and members of the media. The hearing will be conducted with interpretation in Romanian and English. To allow for accurate interpretation, I ask everyone to speak slowly and clearly. The proceedings are being recorded. The recordings of this public hearing will be available online on the Commission's website within 3 days after the hearing. Mr. Cazacu, during the hearing, one or more members of the panel will ask you questions. Please answer them truthfully and completely. Your explanations are important to us in verifying your compliance with the criteria for financial and ethical integrity. In formulating our questions, we will take into account your privacy and, where required and possible, privacy of your family members and close persons. To that end, we will leave out unnecessary details relating to ID numbers, bank account numbers, specific addresses of real estate, and the like. And for your protection and privacy, we would ask that you do the same. You'll also be given the opportunity to make a closing statement to the panel. The evaluation process for this subject was initiated by the Commission on the 24th of May, 2024. On 27 October of this year, Panel B of the Commission notified the subject that had finalized the evaluation and had identified doubts regarding ethical and financial integrity, which would be discussed with the subject at a hearing. And at the same time, they invited the subject to participate in a public hearing. Those doubts were detailed in an annex to the hearing notice that was sent to the subject. On the 7th of November, the subject participated in the public hearing conducted by Panel B. On the 1st of December, Panel B, invoking the provisions of Article 17, Paragraph 3, transmitted the subject's evaluation file to the Commission, as a unanimity of votes could not be achieved amongst the panel members for the approval of the evaluation report regarding Prosecutor Victor Cazacu. Accordingly, on December 8th of 2025, this commission notified the subject of its doubts and invited him to a public hearing before the full commission as scheduled for today, the 19th of December, 2025. Mr. Cazacu, again, thank you for appearing today. At this point, I will yield the floor to my colleague Armantas Mikalonis to begin questions. Armantas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Victor Cazacu, thank you for your participation in these hearings. On 7th of November of this year, during the hearing, you provided an explanation in response to the doubts indicated by the panel in the hearing notice and answered the questions posed by the members of the panel. You have already received another similar notice of hearing from the Commission in which doubts are raised regarding imbalance in 2015 and 2018. Do you have any additional explanation that could be submitted to the Commission in order to dispel the existing doubts?
Hello, and thank you for the possibility to express my explanation additionally about the doubts that are rising. Understanding I may have been not clear enough in the previous public hearing. With respect to the doubts mentioned in the hearing notice submitted to me on 8th of December, to a large extent, from what I was able to analyze, the doubts were kept, and therefore I will reiterate my position and the arguments I mentioned in the public hearing of November 7th, 2025. And what I provided as answers to the round of clarification questions. So, if the Commission allows, I will make reference to some new data, because last time I forgot to mention them, even though I had them prepared. I prepared some notes, but I was not careful enough. I did not mention them with respect to each particular doubt. So, if you don't mind, in order to save time and in order to avoid long breaks and my stuttering from the last hearing about the doubts related to the year 2015, in the points 1 to 13 about an alleged negative balance, and I would like to say that I think the doubts are justified, but I believe that they happened because of some initial data that, from my point of view, and I don't want to reproach the Secretariat staff, let alone, well, the ones who handled it, but I believe that the data that were used to issue the initial conclusions are not relevant for clarifying the situation and the financial profile that I have, not for 2015 and not for 2019, because of course my lifestyle and the expenses that I had did not exceed the income I had. So besides what was mentioned in the previous round regarding certain income in table number 5 annexed to the annual report on income and expenses of population for year 2015, based on which the consumption expenditures were calculated, I would like to mention one thing that I forgot to say last time, namely that calculation in table number 1 that was provided to me this time and last time, it follows that about me, the financial flow, the outgoing financial flow was done with some calculation based on general statistics, 86,814 lei, plus some expenses that were declared by me, vacation expenses in total amount of 20,903 lei. Expenses that, in essence, are already included in the average expenses in the part regarding to cafes, restaurants, transport. And if that is not very plausible, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that in the calculation for year 2015, should deduce, subtract the period when I was away and I had vacation expenses. It was around 2 weeks, 14, 15 days. A period when I spent around 20,903 lei, and that should be subtracted from the total amount of expenses for that month, because it follows from my calculation that the expenses were calculated according to CEP both in the country and that period when I was not in the country, when I was traveling. And I believe that if these things are taken into account, that will generate a positive balance, because this situation results from the overall analysis of my lifestyle, and in none of those 12 years, including 2019, that I will refer to, there was never a financial profile that would be exceeding income, even though at first sight the amount in 2015 is 15,000 is not very important. It could have been covered from the available amounts that were on my salary card, but I insist on the fact that in that year, if the calculation is done based on the comments or explanations that I provided, the resulting balance will be positive. Thank you, and sorry for all of my gestures.
Thank you for your answer. Do you have any additional explanation regarding the imbalance 2018?
I'm going to have to interrupt a minute. Saskia de Vries is not getting the interpretation. So I need to make sure that that gets resolved.
Doar un moment, ea se va conecta pe calculator.
Just a second, she will connect from her computer.
Let's wait to hear from her. Saskia, can you confirm if you have interpretation?
So I will be speaking, and let's see if Saskia can hear me. Sound check, 1, 2, 3. So maybe I should try again. Sound check. Can anyone hear the interpreter? Sound check, the interpreter's here. Sound check, subiectul ăla. So, apparently something is better now. Can you please confirm that you can hear the interpreter? Unu, doi, trei, patru, cinci, șase. Unu, doi, trei, trei. The aforementioned. 1, 2, 3. Să vă citesc o știre. Și asta se înregistrează undeva și pe urmă și... Despre HIV-SIDA, de exemplu. So, sorry, the interpreter's here. Could you please say if you can hear me? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Well, I don't think she can yet.
Chris, but you can hear me because for some time no one could
Saskia,
hear
you
me.
have your mic off, so we can't.
Sorry, but I need to do a certain amount of things at the same time.
Right.
But I should be okay now.
But sorry, Saskia, can you
All right.
hear?
I'm
Can you
sorry,
hear the
we'll
interpreter?
proceed
The
then.
interpreter.
Ermontes, Mr. Cazacu, apologize for the delay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Cazacu, would you like to provide additional information regarding imbalance in 2019?
Da, vă mulțumesc mult.
Thank you. Yes. With respect to the disbalance of negative balance in 2019, as I mentioned, I entirely hold to the explanation I provided before and in the previous public hearing. Also, I would like to mention that the negative balance results exclusively from that situation related to the apartment, because until the purchase of the apartment in Ciocana sector, the calculation in the table shows that I was having a positive balance of 81,000 lei. So, with respect to I will speak about new incoming flows and especially about the availability of my parents to provide me the 23,000 euros loan that I made reference to earlier. Besides the fact that I provided explanations previously about the savings of my parents and the mechanism how they gathered. It was thanks to the joint earnings of my both father and mother. I don't know the reason why, but based on the materials gathered by the commission that I was provided with, it follows that the official income that my mother had in the period between 2012 and 2019 was net income resulting from files 097098, bank transfers, bank turnover, that she was receiving salaries from the official job, and number 130, information from the state tax service. So as a result of my calculations, as of September, because the apartment was purchased in October, but until September, I had net official income wired to my card account in a total of 340,682 lei. While from what I understood in the hearing notice and the doubts that were provided, it followed that my parents did not have other income, and that's what I wanted to mention. With respect to the vehicles that my father had and the income, not only from those cars, but also the work done by him. With respect to the cars, I would like to mention a situation that I think should be taken into account when making calculations to establish the disposable income of disposable money of my parents, especially the total value of the cars that were imported and sold, based on my answers to question to around for question 2, it followed that the total amount for all years was 50,200 euros that were purchased and sold over the years, and they were not, one car, for instance, was not purchased from money obtained from selling the previous car, because my father was going to Germany not with money from Moldova to do that. And if that amount the Commission believes is not justified enough, I believe you should take into account data provided by the Customs Service about my father. File 140 is PDF file 149, from which it follows that the total value of the cars imported by my father in total amount 670,455 lei. That price is related to consists of customs value of the cars 524,000 lei plus customs duties, the official duties that were paid to the service in an amount of 146,455 lei, 0.73. And if we add up even the profit that was referred to in section 25 from the hearing notice, we will see the approximate amount of the available funds of my parents for the year 2019. Moreover, since the situation that I declared exactly after my father came home he came in December, but until February he did not travel, and a part of the money was deposited in an account. I explained it, and the money is still there. I explained that mechanism, how the amounts evolved, because the amounts evolve there because the interest is being added for the period that they are deposited in the account. And I should not forget, if the Commission subtracts the consumption expenses related to my parents, I insist, and I believe that I'm right, that you should look at the minimum level or subtract the period that my father was spending outside the country. And that's why I believe that everything that was mentioned by me will show the available funds that my parents had to help me, to lend me for a short period of time, the money that I used to pay for the apartment. And ultimately, regarding the incoming financial flow, I would like to mention, I don't remember if I said that last time, the amount of 23,000 is not a donation to me. It does not reflect in any way the amount of my wealth for the year 2019. Regarding the outgoing financial flow, besides circumstances, and I will mostly speak about the price of the apartment, the conditions for the purchase and repairs have been described by me already. But I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that that apartment that I purchased, in relation to it, I'd like to say that in the period 2014, and that's the date of the alleged evaluation report, and it's hard for me to speak about it because I did not see it. I don't know those data. It's just an amount that it was subjected to an evaluation of 1,200,000. And besides that amount, for year 2014, there are 3 more amounts. And that is data resulting from the credit documentation that the Commission referred to during the question rounds. So from the files number 160 and 165, we see 3 more amounts that have to be either justified. 1,200,000 from the alleged report, 668,000 lei, 200, the mortgage value by mutual agreement of the parties, and two amounts, 428,160, the replacement value and insured value. If we relate that to the average value for year 2019, which is being mentioned that initially, I was asked about initially in the questions round, the average value that was mentioned by a real estate agency, it was the real estate agency reporting different amounts about the same period of time, while for me, initially there was one value, then a value within an interval in the answer of the 2nd of December, which is contradicting the first answer, and it's not clear for me what criteria were used to determine a different value. Moreover, what I want to say, I am only speaking about the information provided by the real estate agency, especially since it does not correspond to a price where this agency evaluated the apartment of a subject of a candidate in the boards of the SCP when a similar apartment from the same sector located 50 meters away from the block of flats where my apartment is located, they gave totally different value. And I would like to refer to the average price. Furthermore, I sent the Commission certain documents, and I explained why I believe it is correct to relate the purchase transaction to the value of transactions registered in 2019, officially registered with the cadastre. And I believe that it will be found that the situation, my situation, was not an exception. With respect to the amounts provided by the real estate agency, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that in file number 109, information provided by the real estate agency in 2024 shows a reference value, average reference value for the apartment located in Chocana sector in relation to my apartment, an amount of 10,191 lei per square meter, which, related to the total area of the apartment, 72.5 square meters, is an equivalent of 738,847 lei. Subsequently, based on a request from the Commission of August 2025 and a clarification letter of 2nd of September 2025 asking for the minimum, average and maximum value, and that in that clarification letter, there was a question about the fluctuations of the average price that is stated. The opposite to the prices in the table, they made reference to the amount of 785,000 minimum and 855 maximum. And that is with respect to the average value, and that is a 140,000 fluctuation range. At the same time, I would like to inform you, I would like to speak about the information related to another subject of the evaluation, only about the information that was provided in section 29 of the decision of 27th, decision number 27th of 10th of December 2024. An apartment, similar apartment, I believe the difference was, it was 69.9 square meters, and my apartment is 72.5. The apartments are located 50 meters from one another, even though my apartment is located in a way that it is on Mircea cel Bătrân Boulevard, and the other subject's apartment was on Igor Vieru Street, but they are nearby, they are next to each other. And that apartment in 2015 was purchased. It was probably purchased when the reference values including the ones in the table provided by the real estate agency. And based on the information provided from open sources regarding the development of the market and the downward trend, they were showed a value 692,209 lei for an apartment that's almost similar. And that's why it is difficult for me, like, how can I prove it except by the fact that I stated and I provided the contract, and from what I've seen, the former owner has confirmed the details of the transaction. Give me a second, please. I want to check that I did not forget anything. One more thing here. Since you are insisting on the price of 2014, 1,229,000, from the analysis and from everything that I explained so far, that comes from the analysis of the materials that the Commission has gathered during the evaluation. So the amount of 1.2 million is explicable from the loan-related documentation. For instance, in file 165, the PDF file, on page 7, documents submitted by the commercial bank who provided the loan. We can see there are some provisions that justify the high price, and it's not only valid for this apartment, but it's valid for vehicles, the movable goods that were mortgaged. All the goods that movable or immovable goods that were set as collateral or mortgage, they were supposed to cover the amount of $400 in the context where the amount was $60,000 only, so 800,000. So I believe that the way and the methodology applied when I don't know the methodology that they use in those agreements, but I think it can be explained. Then the bank with the debtor reached an agreement about the amount of 668,200, and that was the only value within which it could have gathered its claims if the debtor fails to fulfill the contractual duties. Also, the potential price for which I purchased the apartment on Mircea cel Bătrân Boulevard, I wanted to share a conclusion that results from the materials you have, file 162, PDF file. It's related to the cadastral documentation. The price for the mentioned apartment was not a loss for the former owner. The mentioned apartment was purchased in 2002 from some citizens for the amount of equivalent. It was 44,380 lei. That was equivalent of 3,316 euros or $3,264, which for that period of time, give or take, was appropriate. I know that situation because my parents, I was a minor back then. When we moved to Chisinau, we moved in 1998. The prices were a bit higher, and in 2001, 2002, some relatives of ours moved to Chisinau, which for an apartment similar that we bought, I mean my parents, I say we, but that's how I used to say, it's related to family links. They purchased similar apartments at much lower prices because the prices went down in that period of time. So the price that I paid was not a loss, but that is my opinion based on the data and the materials that the Commission holds.
Și cam asta e. And that was roughly it. Thank you.
Thank you for your explanations. Yesterday, on 18th of December, you submitted additional documents to the Commission by email. Among other documents, you provided an analysis of the real estate market in Chisinau for the second half of 2015 year. Who conducted this analysis, and on the basis of which data was it prepared?
Thank you for the question. If you remember, as regards the established data, well, I've mentioned that in the previous hearing as well. And I can provide the emails, the electronic addresses from which I took those excerpts of information. Those open sources can be checked. You can just go to those, any member of the Commission could go to those links. So there's a website, and I could send you, when I go back to office, I can send you the addresses, but you can also see at the bottom of the page the addresses and where that was accessed with a real estate company, and then another one that's a radio station in the capital city, and then another website of a company, of a real estate company. And there are reflected some studies that are carried out and taking into account their line of business, they draw some conclusions. And the reason why I put down that the website of the geodesy agency, I think it's about 15 pages if I'm not mistaken. The argument is, and that has to do with how reasonable the price was, because out of the notice it appears that in 2019 I had 63,000 when the prices were reported, that is, the prices that were put down. So it felt like, it appeared that, let me remember, but it was said that the real estate that are in the luxury category, that the price oscillates from 851,100 euros, but in 2019 I purchased it for 63,000. So, as it was alleged, so that would be 868 per square meter. But for an apartment from among the old apartments to be regarded as a luxury one, I don't think that it's correct to put it in the category of luxury apartments, though it is an older building. So that's why I submitted those excerpts, those documents. But out of the notice, of the hearing notice, it's like it was not just 63, but more. And I've explained that, I've shared that information in order to, how should I put it, in order to show, I'm not sure what words I have to choose, but what it says in item 44 of the notice, for instance, I don't know what the criteria were that, taking into account that the procurement of the apartment by the subject occurred in October 2019, that is 5 years and 7 months after the assessment of this apartment by an independent evaluator, and taking into account that the prices for real estate in Chisinau in general have raised in that period, the value of this apartment would have logically been even larger. So as far as that matter is concerned, for this purpose, I've looked into the data from that study. It is still there. In fact, if there's any member of the Commission could look it up. And I apologize, but with regards to the prices that were indicated by the real estate agency, in file 106, the average prices for 2015, that's what that file tells us, that they are larger than for 2019. That's what file 106 says. But in assessing the value, it was like the apartment in 2019 was, well, more expensive than the one in 2015. So that's something that I wanted to also underscore. And that is all. I have annexed that information, and last time I've stated that that was open sources, and out of the newly accumulated information, well, I thought that this information was not looked up, so I thought that if there's something that I thought was not looked up, I should make it available. That's all.
Thank you. I would like to clarify. So my mentioned that analysis was prepared by you, it means, based on open source information. Is correct?
The analysis, yes. The analysis that I made, yes. But all the documentation, all of that, those are actually screenshots from websites. I did not make that up. I just took over the data. I used the data, but the data is available even now on the website of the Geodesy and Cadastre, for instance. I mean, their information is there. When you go to that link, then you see the document. So I did not add anything. I did not add anything, and the data, the information came out of studies carried out by the National Bureau of Statistics. And I've looked up 2015 because it comes after 2014, and I just wanted to show the dynamics of the market, how the market evolved, just to try to bring a little bit more clarity regarding this matter.
I can hear.
I've lost any sound.
I also lost the sound.
Virginia, Orion.
Noi vă auzim foarte bine.
We can hear very well. We hear everyone well.
Romanis, can you hear?
Yes, I hear you. Yes,
Sorry. I think you can proceed with questions.
Yes, Mr. Victor Cazacu, could you repeat the last your statements to my question?
With regards to the analysis that you've provided and the information that you used for that analysis. As I've just stated, the document that I have extracted, that is an analysis made by the representatives of the agency, or rather using data of the NBS. That is, I just took over the data and put that down in the explanations that I shared with the Commission. But the data, that is official data obtained by people responsible of creating or producing such data. I just use data produced by somebody else just to show the dynamics of the real estate market, how that market evolved. That is, I used statistics for that.
Thank you. You also submitted by email to the Commission data on household income and expenditures for the year 2015. On the basis of which sources were these data provided to the Commission?
Thank you. That data was published on the website of the National Bureau of Statistics, and that is the data that is accompanying the report, the annual report for 2015, with regards to the population, income, and expenses. So using the data on the table, when it comes to the CEP, the average expenditure for consumption, so there is a breakdown for expenses, household expenses. In Table 5, there are expenses per capita in a household in the urban area, residing in the urban area. And now I don't have it right here, but in the table for 2015, there is the value, the reference value for 2015. So that's 2,475.4 per capita, per person. For myself, that would be 2,382.5 given the equivalent of expenses in kind, that is 93 lei. And then there are some references to some expenses for instance, alcoholic beverages and tobacco, and how the apartment is fitted out, given that the works for the apartment, the one that I did the indoor work, so that was in 2014. That's when we finished indoor works, and then transportation expenditure, entertainment, hotels, restaurants, cafes, and the other expenses. That's what I took it from. And thus I deduced, I believe that I deduced correctly the expenses related to the minor daughter, about 13%, because a minor, for instance, we cannot attribute tobacco, communications, education, alcoholic beverages. My daughter at that time was 2 years old, so we cannot apply those expenses to her. This is all based on official data. Thank you.
During the previous hearing, you undertook to submit certain documents to the Commission. My question is whether the documents submitted by email yesterday include the documents that you had undertaken to provide during the previous hearing.
It's exactly the same documentation that I made reference to. So I thought that I would provide the information orally, and then the Commission would double check that to make sure that everything is accurate. So that's why everything is there, the links to the websites, it's all there, and if you watch again the recording of the previous hearing, you will see that I've had the same arguments. That's why I was thinking of coming up with new arguments, but the same data. It's not new information, it is the same information.
Thank you for your answers. I don't have more questions at this stage.
All right. At this point, we'll go to Ms. Marara. Virginia.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Cazacu, I too have some follow-up questions with regards to what you stated at the previous hearing, but first I would like to ask some clarification questions, to seek more clarification regarding certain statements you've made today in this hearing. So the first thing that I would like us to focus on, just to make sure that I and my other colleagues in the Commission, that we have the same understanding, that we are on the same page about what you stated regarding the income of your mother, that you've identified, that you've stated as per the information from the STS that set out in your evaluation file. So you've referred to that. Now I can't remember a few hundred thousand. You've mentioned that amount, but you've also stated that she's accumulated that over 2012 through 2019 when you bought that apartment. So you've mentioned a few 100,000 less an amount as income earned by your mother in Moldova on the basis of her employment contract. So on the basis of her employment. Thank you for this question. That is official income registered with the State Tax Service. And I've also made some reference to, well, there was a file. No, I mentioned the file just to show that the information at the STS match the amounts transferred to the card. So I looked it up until September to make sure that I'm not accused that I included October when the salaries are paid. But my mother continued to work afterwards. After she retired, she continued to work. We are not accusing you of anything, and we have no intention of accusing you or charging you with anything. We just want clarification, so all of our discussion is focused on clarifying things. So my question concerning what you've mentioned, just to make sure that I got it right, the mother has accumulated that income, or has she been spending over the years? I mean, from 2012 until 2019, with all those years. Thank you. I believe I was not clear enough. I don't know exactly what was the mechanism for the savings to be pulled. It's only that out of the notice, hearing notice, it felt like my parents did not have any official income at all. But I wanted to clarify that my parents. And that also matches what I've stated in the rounds, I think starting with the second round of questions with regards to the mechanism of amassing cash savings. So that my father was bringing some money over. Some money was being spent, what my mother was paying for instance, the day-to-day expenses of the household, day-to-day expenses. So there was money that my father was bringing and was being put aside as savings. So as to that, I just wanted to clarify the financial profile, and the notice was not quite clear about it. And the commission was to establish that. It's only that. So all the income that your mother has earned has registered, and the official registered income of your father in 1 year only as for the SDS, speaking of 2012 through 2019. So we do have that information. My question is, again, with regards to this income, according to the information that is available to us, and you've seen that in your file, until 2019, in your parents' family, there were 2 minor children. No, your sister, my sister. Well, but my brother was an adult. When did he turn 18? When did he come of age? He was born in 88, which means in 20. What? So after 2012, he was no longer. Was he or was he not? So in 2002, he was 14. And he was 18 and 2016, and my sister. Now, my question is regarding these 2 other members of the family. Were there major expenses in addition to the day-to-day expenses for clothing, education, food, and so on and so forth, that your parents covered? Thank you. I forgot to address this in my efforts to clarify things, but I've indirectly addressed it when I spoke about the modest lifestyle of my parents. Neither my parents nor I have sought private services for education, like kindergartens or school. Both my brother and sister, when they studied university, they had a scholarship. They went to public schools, so no major expenses were incurred with regards to their upbringing in that way. And my next question has to do with the transportation means that you've mentioned, and also in relation to your father. And as we've seen, your father has imported those vehicles from abroad into Moldova. And out of what you stated during the questions rounds, but also at the hearings on the 7th of November, what you provided yesterday as well, you've mentioned that that was one of the sources of income that was at some point made part of the amassed savings of your parents, what they had as at the date when you were given that loan. So several vehicles from 2012 through 2018, according to the information in the custom service system, your father has imported 7 vehicles. 6 of them have been sold. One of them, at the time that the information was being collected, was still being owned by your father, one of the 7. Also, well, until 2011, vehicles have also been imported into the country by your father. But during the rounds of questions, you have stated that from all of that, some profit was registered, and that was used to add up to the savings. Can you tell us how big the profit was for those, or for at least some of those vehicles? You did not share that with us. You did not provide supporting documentation. We were not able to have clarity about it. Well, we see there are some amounts that we see with the customs in the customs service. That is the amount reported in the customs, or the customs value of that, and the customs service has a particular formula according to which they make these calculations. They have several formulae, and the import duties that were paid, that is beyond doubt that that is the correct amount. But then there is that amount that we have, that we see in the system. Yet we need to know what was paid when your father bought the cars, and how much was levied, was collected upon the sale of the cars. As regards the cars, if I see the answers, at that time I remember having provided details. I have asked my father about it, and as a matter of principle, out of what he was able to remember, he informed me, he told me how much he paid for every car and how much he sold every car for. For 2011, I submitted a statement from my uncle. For him, my father brought him a car. And it's only yesterday that I provided that because I tried to look things up, and there was that last car that was sold. I know for certain that it was sold to someone in Stefanvorde. I did not find the last buyer, but I had hoped that I would at least find him and inquire into the Volkswagen car. And for every car, the profit would depend. It would be a case-by-case situation, but the profit was not, how should I put it? I mean, the importation of cars was not pursuing. Of course, the profit was pursued, but it's better than having a loss. But for my father, it was important to have something to drive home. That was the key purpose. He needed to save on back on funds that he would have spent driving or on his way back. And people, he could bring something over, as I've mentioned the other time, indeed. And as for profit, well, if you tell me what car specifically, as far as I can remember, I've written something down there. And there is that for individuals, in the personal records of individuals, you can see how many cars they have and so on and so forth. So right now, I can't say specifically how much, when, and what, but I just wanted to provide an additional piece of evidence that if the commission, oh well, I've looked it up, and I've looked into the other decisions that were issued. So the official documentation, considering that my situation is just like, is that I cannot provide official documentation on my father's employment, but I wanted to help build a picture that shows that there were some available funds. I don't know if I did a good job about it. That's specifically why we wanted to clarify that we wanted to see the clear picture of the income that your father could have earned. My next question is also about the transportation, the vehicles. Again, you can see that as you've stated, in the individual's records that is issued by the Public Services Agency, and you can see over there all of the cars owned in the past and at present by your father. In this particular instance, so according to the information system, until 2011, I think your father was the owner of, he would register and then deregister because he would sell them, but there were 5 cars. And for 5 of them, there's been the right of usufruct registered. So with regards to this right of usufruct as a source that you have mentioned, given the amounts that were amassed, still, what was the legal ground for registering it? And at a later point, your father, did he have anything to gain out of this usufruct? For 5 cars, the right of usufruct was registered of your father, not ownership right, but he had that right on those cars. But this right of usufruct, as far as I can remember, I think there were 2 or 3 cars, if I'm not mistaken, that were registered under my name. So the practice was in this way, that from 2000, well, let me give you a short introduction. From 2004 onwards, so from 2004, I started to work. It was not an official employment, so to speak. But for as long as I was a student, this was something that I would do to provide for myself, to earn some income and cover my expenses, such as the tuition fee. So I just started doing that. I would bring a car and I would do that. It's a public hearing, but if you can, I mean, I don't insist on this being a closed hearing, but if you could blur this, I would engage in transportation of commodities, of goods. So all of those are trucks. And the cars my father would have, that would be a right of use of and loan for use on my name, and the other way around. The other way around was also true. If the cars were in his name, then he would. So if he traveled to Germany, for instance, I could take care of those cars if he was in Germany while he was there. But the police officers at that time, they were really strict. And if they would pull you over and you didn't have that loan for use agreement, then you could, well, have trouble. So that was the reason. And I think those are cars that were on my name. I think there might have been some other car until 2011 or 2009. I know that my father has purchased in Moldova some cars, and there could have been a power of attorney and this loan for use agreement only. So this is what it was. And another question that I have is with regards to the statement that you've made, and that you've also stated that during the rounds of questions, but then there is a statement signed by your mother stating that as at the date of the loan, she had an amount that was practically twice the amount that she gave you to buy the apartment. And that amount, as you've stated during the rounds of questions, that was built up, amassed from 1997 through 2019, or was it a different period? Well, the questions, the follow-up questions were something along the lines of what income, as far as I can remember, as in 2012, so focus was on 2012 and 2019. What my mother stated, that was only meant to confirm what I've said. Though it's them who I've asked about how much they had available. In one of the rounds of questions, might be the last one if I'm not mistaken, I've put down that amount that was available because the commission asked about it. What was the amount available when the loan was given to me? And the gist of her statement, maybe I misinterpreted the hearing notice, but I felt like the issue was not about the origin, but about whether I took or did not take the money from my parents or not. And it's rather for that reason that I've asked her to write a statement, because I don't have anything else to provide, and that was the reason why I've asked her to put it down. But that matches what I've stated. Okay, but my question is with regards to a different matter. Can you explain what is the economic rationale behind your parents keeping that amount, which was not small for Moldova's economic realities, in 2019? Why would they keep that at home in an apartment, and why would they not keep it in a bank account or across a number of bank accounts, which is what they did in 2020 when you've stated that you've given the loan back? Thank you. Or why is it that they did not invest that amount into something? Well, as for investments, when speaking about my family, there are two people who are, far from anything investments. And I'm not sure that when I, for instance, share the ID information of my siblings and my mother, I mean, you see there's a large families, and the funds, the amounts, they were not huge to be kept in a bank. And then we're speaking about people who are quite conservative in their views when it comes to the management of money. And the money that was deposited in 2020, that's just because that is money that was prepared for my siblings, brother and sister, that is, if they ever if and when they get to marry. So that's why the money is there. I mean, they would have maybe deposited even more if those events that followed didn't happen. But these are just, they are people who it's not that they are not economically or financially literate, but I mean, they might not be, I mean, they don't have the financial literacy, and they've never pursued to earn money out of deposits, like from interest rates. And even now, I don't even know how this discussion occurred in 2020. How did they come to the decision to deposit on that account? But I know that it was specifically for this. They are of a more advanced age, and my father, well, now he is still working in Germany. He still works there. He might be still traveling there next year and the next year after that.
Thank you. A few more questions. Regarding the apartment that you have, the one purchased in 2019, according to the address data that we can see in the information system of a public service agency, in your personal case island, your parents is very close to your mother's home. I believe this is the apartment where you have all lived when you were a minor. Just for a clarification, your brother, does he also own an apartment in the same neighborhood? On the same street, I mean? Or, well, it's like a triangle, if you schematically look. It's a triangle between the apartments. On the other side of the alley, my parents are living. My brother is living across the street. And on this side of the alley, because it's even numbers, on the across the street are odd numbers. So is it a coincidence, or was it a common desire of a family, or yours or your brothers, to be living close to each other? Also, given the years when you acquired right of ownership over real estate nearby from your parents. The location of the apartment is a coincidence. No, the fact that I purchased is a coincidence. When my brother purchased it, he was the last. He chose to be close to the parents. When I was first talking about the apartment, I was thinking it's on Zadnipro Street. I mean, it was not a matter of principle. It just so happened it's across the street from my parents. But I wasn't aiming precisely for that. You know, if it was at the end of Mircea Bătrân, closer to the roundabout, I would have purchased it anyway. And when my brother decided to purchase it, he looked for something nearby. I remember that situation. He visited and checked it out together with my parents. He found two apartments, one that was across the street, the one that he purchased, and one was at the end on Dominic Street, but that was in a new building. It was more expensive. For me and for the national colleagues, what you are saying about location of apartment, it's rather clear because we know the places in Chisinau. For our international colleagues, that's probably more difficult, but we will handle that later on. My next question is about the period of time when your father was working abroad, and you have probably seen the declarations, the statements, out of a list of people that you provided, individuals. There were some statements from them who confirmed to the Commission. Some of them, to foreign citizens, also provided those statements in a copy to you, stating that they were confirming that your father was working at that time or another time in a country from the European Union. What I want to clarify is the following thing. The Moldovan citizens who provided statements mentioned that your father was working, or that they together worked in the field of construction in the period between 2010 and 2014, or in a similar period that was mentioned by another citizen, and they were working without having official employment contracts, and you confirmed that they were being paid in cash every time without any bank transfers, and they never had social insurance, medical insurance. They did not have accommodation or the meal that some employers provide to their employees. Could you please tell us in this respect, what were the approximate expenses, the average monthly expenses of your father to support himself or per year, one of those years that he was abroad? Because you claimed that we should subtract from the consumption expenses if we do a different calculation for your parents' family, so that we would ascertain their income and expenses. You said we should subtract from the CEP the period that your father was abroad. So we would like to know, while you say that he had a monthly income of 2,000-3,000 euros when he was working informally, we want to know what were his expenses to support himself abroad. Living expenses. Yes, thank you. I am sorry this question wasn't asked, because I would have taken pictures. I would have asked my father to send me photos from where he lives. Rental expenses are 80 euros per month, and I'll explain you why. Because it's this room where you are. In such a room, there are 3 beds. There are 2 nearby rooms in an attic. You can see in the photo of the room, you can see it's an attic with a ladder in the middle. The toilet is outside, and there are 2 rooms of at most 16 to 18 square meters, and there are 3 beds, one next to each other, and 3 beds in the other room, and they are all sharing it together. That's why the rental is around 80 euros. In winter time, it may raise to 100. The conditions are poor, but the price, because it is in an area neighboring Frankfurt. That's how, and the food expenses are around 150 to 200 euros, and that is relevant for the prices out there. That's it. And the rental price, I think you wouldn't have questions about it if I showed photos from that place. I was there a long time ago. He still lives there. The living conditions are very poor. That's why it explains the price. If I understand you correctly, during the entire period, we speak about the period 2012. He's there since 2010. He was living in the same place where I sent that Iselstrasse, where I sent the photo. He's there since 2010. By the way, there were periods until 2010 where he lived. I have a cousin who is officially living there, has German citizenship. He lived at his place for some time in the period, well, I may be mistaken, but somewhere in 2008, 2009, he was living there in a suburb of Frankfurt, in Egelhausen. So he lived there. But since 2010, he has been living at the address that he has today as well. Okay, one more question. Since you are mentioning that he lives in the same place or apartment, or same place, you provided some documents that show that he has residence at that address. But according to the legal provisions, the right of residence is granted based on some legal documents. What were the grounds under which your father got the request to have his official residence there, or based on what was residence granted? From what I know, they were then checked, because police is sometimes checking, And if, because he has documents, he may spend there as much time as he wants. And I don't know what was the reason, but in 2017, if I remember, when he filed for it, I don't know the reason why it was in 2017 that he obtained his residence. I don't know the legal grounds under which he obtained it, but the person who is responsible, on whose name the contract is, because it's one person, on whose name the rental agreement is registered, is also a Moldovan citizen. So that person is responsible. So I don't know what the reasons were in 2017. I can tell you what were the reasons why he started to obtain medical insurance, usually like travel medical insurance, because in 2016 he had a medical issue and he couldn't obtain any service, and that's why he started to obtain insurance, but after that he never had. But he was buying these insurances just in case he would need an emergency care, healthcare. Okay, if we're speaking about those medical insurance that were contracted over those years, maybe you provided some, maybe there were more of them, but we see a period of around 7, 8, maybe more months per year for which medical insurance was contracted. That meant that, and you said it previously, that he was going there several times a year for shorter periods of time. And I want to understand, it's not clear to me, when you have the possibility to obtain income, and since many of Moldovan citizens, regardless of going abroad based on Moldovan citizenship or Romanian citizenship, they try to get some official documentation in order to obtain some benefit, because when you have a legal employment contract, you have insurance, you pay some taxes to the state, you can afterwards obtain a pension, even a minimum, which of course compared to Moldova is higher, to be straight. And for the entire period, that is the evaluation period between 2012 and 2019, when your apartment was purchased, from what you explained, your father has never had legal income. He has always been employed informally, and I want to understand what was the rationale behind that. I explained the answer to this question. I apologize for all of my gestures. It's like a tick of mine. This question about the reasons why he was not officially registered. At the previous hearing, I said that soon as you get officially registered in Germany, at least this is what my father told me. And by the way, my father has a brother over there who is registered officially, and he comes on holidays, 2 weeks in summer, 2 weeks in winter for vacation. And he has medical insurance, and I don't know if he had any social benefits or unemployment benefits, but in case of my father, that wasn't the purpose, to be living there. His purpose was to go initially, and maybe that is the reason why he was getting insurance for longer times in Germany. Well, you know when you go there, but you never know when you'll come back. If there's work, you can spend longer times and work there, and that's why he was buying insurance for longer periods, maybe. But it couldn't be possible for my father to get a benefit that would overcome or exceed the situation, meaning that if you want to keep your family, you can't live there a long time. 2-3 months over there, 2-3 months over here. My parent, my father is 70. When he went there, he wasn't managing to gather enough days for which he could benefit, could obtain some social benefits from the state of Germany.
Câteva întrebări cu referire la
Thank you. Now some questions about the apartments that you purchased in 2019 on 18th of October.
și ulterior ați
And then you sold your apartment that you had in another sector.
20
Virginia,
Around
Yes.
would it make sense? I believe Jan Grauer had some questions
Okay.
on the working in Germany. And before we move to the apartment, at this point, it might make sense for Jan to follow up on that.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, if that's okay, Virginia.
Vreau să întreb despre periodicitatea.
I wanted to ask about the frequency or periods of work. Was it different across the years or was it stable?
Da, asta și în runda
And in the rounds of questions, usually, or it may happen that the chronology is different. Usually there were 2-3 months. For example, he was leaving the beginning of February, coming before Easter. Then he was leaving after Easter and was staying there until it was getting very hot, maybe June, July and August he was almost always home. And then he was going there in September and coming back for New Year's. So this regime, if you could call it like that, was the same during these years. And maybe if we had data from the border police about the border crossings, we could see that he never spent there less than 2 months. So usually it was 2 or 3 months at a time, not less than 2 months and not more than 3 months. Well, there were periods when he stayed there. It's hard for me to recall right now all of the periods. I did not clarify it, but there were times when he spent more time there. For instance, how do I see the connection? From New Year's to Easter, when the Easter is later, because Easter can sometimes be in April, sometimes it's in May. So usually he was coming in the Easter week, on the Easter week. There were cases when he came after Easter holidays. And of course, there were some cases when he spent longer times, but not shorter than 2 or 3 months. Otherwise, it wasn't worth it to go there. Could you please confirm that 2-3 months constantly since 2010 until 2019? Not more, constantly during that period. So during a year, he was spending 6-7 months abroad in a year, meaning 2-3 months at a time. He was coming back, going back. I was asking, how many months per year he was working? 6-7 months for sure he was spending there, as I explained. Do you know what was the income, the average income per month that your father was getting for his work? Thank you. I explained in the answers to question rounds, and I provided an average value between 2,000 and 3,000 euros, and that is in line with the prices that are there. That's between 10 to 15 euros per hour of work. Please take into account that in Germany, informal labor is paid less than legal work. I agree it may be less, but for the same type of work for which he's paid informally 10-15 euros, the company charges 35, I believe, with all of the taxes to be covered. So what I'm saying is what I was told by my father and the other people. So he was providing services like gardening, or was he exclusively working in construction? It depends. It depends on the situation. There was a period when he was working only in constructions. And then later, after 2019, after he got a circle of acquaintances, he was sometimes doing gardening for someone who needed to take care of a garden and arrange, do some things in the household. How do you explain the fact that the lowest accommodation costs in a hostel are 10-15 euros per night, while your father was paying 80 euros a month? That's why I was saying, my father is already on his way home, but if it were possible for me to show you photos, this is a room 16-18 square meters that is divided among 3 people on one side and on the other side. That's what I was told, and that's why he's living there, because he saves money. About hostels, I don't know. Anyway, this is what my father told me. He's paying for it. The demand for rental is high in Germany because there's a high fluctuation of migrants and people who are looking for a place to live. Therefore, the amount of 80 euros per month sounds bizarre. It's 80 euros per bed. There are 2 rooms, 3 people in every room, and this is added up. So it's 6 people, from what I know. That's what I was saying. I was saying what my father is paying, and that's why they keep that place. That's why he keeps staying at that place, even though the conditions are poor. One more question. All that time when your father was working in Germany, has he ever transferred money back home by bank transfers or otherwise? No, never. And he never declared at customs, but he never had an amount of money more than 10,000 on his way back. No more questions for now.
Laura, I'll go to you if it's on this issue.
Thank you, Chris. Mulțumesc foarte mult. Stimate domnule
Thank you,
procuror, aș avea și eu o
esteemed
întrebare să vă
prosecutor. I
adresez în
have a
legătură cu
question to
pregătirile
ask about
părinților,
your parents' income,
pentru că,
because
într-adevăr, ați
indeed
atras atenția asupra
you
veniturilor
drew the
mamei
attention about the
dumneavoastră,
income of your mother,
care totalizează între
which
2013 și
in between
2019
2013 and
de
2019 added up to
342
around 342,000 lei.
Eu vreau să vă întreb
I would like to
dacă din
ask
banii
you
aceștia,
if, out of that
după părerea
money,
dumneavoastră,
in your
în
opinion,
condițiile în care mama dumneavoastră
in
era cea
circumstances
care
when your
câștiga
mother was the one
venituri
who was
fiscalizate, ca să spun așa, în Moldova.
earning
Și ținând cont și de
taxed
ceea
income in
ce,
Moldova, and
putea
taking into
tatăl
account of what
dumneavoastră
your
să
father
aducă acasă după munca pe care o presta
was able to
în
bring
Germania,
home
dacă,
after
după părerea
his work
dumneavoastră,
in
în
Germany,
această perioadă,
in your
puteau fi
opinion,
puși
in that
deoparte
period of time, could they,
acești
would they be
bani
able to set
care
aside
apoi v-au
that
folosit dumneavoastră
money
pentru a
that
achiziționa
you
apartamentul
used to
sub
buy
forma acestui
the
credit
apartment
de
as that
nevoi pe termen scurt, să spunem.
short-term loan that they gave you?
Cer scuze, n-am înțeles.
I'm sorry, I did not understand your question.
Deci,
What should I
părinții
explain?
dumneavoastră
So, your parents
au 3 copii.
have 3
Dumneavoastră,
children,
un frate și o soră.
you and
Fratele a devenit
brother and a
major în
sister.
2018,
Your brother
sora
became of age
dumneavoastră
in
în
2018 and your sister
2016, sora
in
dumneavoastră în
16,
2019,
and your
fratele
sister in
dumneavoastră
2019.
presupun că a locuit
Your
împreună
brother,
cu
I believe,
mama
was living together
până la
with
ce
his
vârstă?
mother until what age?
Sau până în ce an?
Or until what year? Until after university. After university,
Adică
he got about approximately, that would be
2020?
2020?
2020,
Yes, I think
da?
2020.
Deci fratele dumneavoastră major
Eu,
locuia cu mama dumneavoastră în
adult
domiciliul
brother was
părinților.
living with
Da?
your
Mama
mother at their
dumneavoastră
parents' home.
ne-ați atras
Your
atenția că
mother,
avea
you drew the attention
venituri din
that she
salarii pe
had
care le avem și
salary,
noi
and
calculate
we
undeva
had that
între
information.
2013 și
Between
2019, undeva la
2013 and 2019, she
342 de
earned
euro.
around
Cunoscând faptul că mama
342,000.
dumneavoastră
And
locuia
knowing that
în
your
Moldova
mother
cu
was
ceilalți doi copii,
living in Moldova
tatăl
with her two
dumneavoastră
children,
ne-ați
your
explicat lucra în
father,
Germania.
as you explained, was working in Germany.
Din punctul dumneavoastră de
From your
vedere,
point
din
of view,
acești
out of these
342.000 de lei
342,000
câștigați între
that she
2013 și
earned
2019,
between 2013 and
plus
2019,
veniturile pe care le aducea
plus
tatăl
the
dumneavoastră,
income that your
se puteau pune
father
deoparte
was bringing,
23.000
were they
de euro
able to put
aproximativ?
aside 23,000 euros approximately?
Părerea mea?
In my opinion?
Părerea mea, da.
In my opinion,
Părerea
yes.
dumneavoastră, da.
Yes, your opinion. I believe it is possible
Dacă erau bani,
because I mean, they had the money.
înseamnă că a fost posibil.
It means it was possible. I don't know how to explain that more.
Ați subliniat
highlighted,
veniturile mamei dumneavoastră. Considerați că ele
your
permiteau
mother's
și
income. Do you
acumulare sau
think
doar acoperirea
that
cheltuielilor de consum în
income
perioada
allowed
de
for
referință?
savings or only for covering the living expenses during the reference period?
Repet, între
I
2013 și
repeat, in the
2019
period
au fost
between
undeva la
2013 2019, there were around 342,000 lei. Sorry, I will try to address it from a different perspective.
Eu am indicat că nu cunosc care
I said I don't know
mecanismul de
what was the
formare a
mechanism
economiilor numerate,
of how they made these cash savings.
care nu erau în
Just
notificare de audiere.
since they were not in the hearing notice, this data was not in the hearing notice, I believe it's useful
Referire la acestea,
to make reference to them,
cel puțin dintr-un domeniu, dintr-un punct de vedere să arăt
at least from one point of view, to show that
inclusiv și oficial.
there was income, including official income.
Dar
That's
deja
what
ce
I meant.
bani au rămas
But
în
then
salariu,
what money was left of her salary, that I don't know.
nici nu am
I
precizat de la părinți care au fost mecanismul de
never asked my parents about how they formed savings, how much money was left, for instance, from the official income, how much money was spent from my father's earnings, and how
economiile.
they formed cash savings.
Am înțeles.
Is that the answer? Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, Laura, do you have more questions now? Cornell.
Mulțumesc, domnul președinte.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Stimate domnule procuror, am
Esteemed
câteva
Mr.
întrebări care
Prosecutor,
nu
I
mi
have a
sunt
few
clare. După cât
questions
înțeleg,
that are not
fratele
clear to me.
dumneavoastră,
From what
anul
I
nașterii
understand,
este 1988.
your brother was
E
born in
corect sau nu?
1988. Is that right?
Da, da.
Yes,
Din
yes.
Da, din decembrie.
December,
Apoi
December
atunci,
24.
pur și simplu,
I'm
eu
sorry,
And that's-
we're not getting any interpretation. of
Sound
Cornell.
check. Sound check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2,
Yeah, we
3.
hear you, but we didn't get any interpretation on
Oh, I
Cornell.
will ask him to repeat then.
Cornell, can you repeat your question?
Da, repet.
Yes, yes.
Stimate domnule procuror,
Esteemed
pur și simplu
Mr. Prosecutor,
se vehiculează sau retrăit sau
maybe you
că
have
eu cu
some
matematica stau bine
emotional.
și
I mean, I'm good at
întrebarea mea
maths,
constă,
and
dacă
my
fratele
question is the
dumneavoastră, anul
following:
nașterii
your
este
brother was born in
1988,
1988.
apoi majoratul de
Then
18 ani, el
he
l-a făcut
turned
în anul
18
2006,
in
nu în
2006, not
2016.
2016.
Dacă facem
If
adunarea
we
cu
just
18,
Add
apoi
18.
și spuneți că el
And then you
a
said
trecut
that
separat
he
de părinți
moved
după
and
ce
lived
a terminat
separately after he
universitatea.
finished
Vârsta
university.
de finalizare a
And
universității
the
la noi
age of
23
graduating
de ani.
university is 23 years.
1988, asta
And
e
then
anul
88 plus 23,
2011.
that would be
Și el
2011.
a continuat să,
And
după ce a terminat universitatea,
after
a
he
continuat să trăiască
graduated
cu
from
părinții
university,
sau
he
s-a
continued to
mutat
live
în
with the
separat?
parents, or did he move and lived separately?
Da, eu nu știu, am calculat greșit.
Yes, I
Nu
calculated
nimic,
wrong.
înțelegem, emoțiile
It's all
tot
right.
nu
We
vă
understand
faceți
you
greșit.
may be nervous.
Să explic de
I
ce,
will explain why.
după finisarea universității,
After he finished
fratele meu,
university,
din start
my brother
s-a angajat la
got
inspecția socială
employed at the
de lângă
social
Ministerul
inspection under the Ministry of Labor,
și lucru prevedea
and his work
deplasările în teritoriu cu săptămâni când verificau
was
persoanele
about
care beneficiază de el,
business trips for weeks long. I mean, he was
el locuia
in the country checking on people that were receiving services from Monday to Friday. So, and there was a childhood friend of his.
acum, bun, băiat
Now he's not here in the UK, but they were living not far from my parents. They studied together in school, in high school, and after graduation he moved there. And I don't know if someone knows about social inspection. I don't know when it was liquidated and then created again, so he was left without a job. The working regime was about weekly business travel. For instance, taking one district, Oknitsa district, the control took, let's say, 1 month. So they were visiting all villages in the district and they were living in hotels somewhere. But after that, he was usually living with his friend in the parents' apartment, who were in turn living in Hâncești. They had a house there. I understood. So we have the average age 23 years, let's say, that is around 2011, when your brother got employed and he started to support himself financially. Yes, I was mistaken first. Yes, thank you for your answers. The second question, your sister was born, if I remember, was born in 2001. Yes, that is right. That means that she came of age in 2019, and that is specifically the year that is in question. So here I would like to ask you, your sister, when she turned 18, after she turned 18, did she continue to live with your parents, and is she being supported by them?
No, when she came of age, well, she's registered with my parents, but she's living, I mean, she's not staying with our parents anymore, but she's officially registered there. My sister, she officially works. She's worked from the very first year in university. She's worked in an NGO under the Technical University of Moldova. And recently, by the way, last year, she left that position. Now she works somewhere, but I don't know where. And well, while she had a scholarship, so the government was paying her for her education, and while studying already, she was receiving a salary too that was part-time, if I'm not mistaken, because she was also pursuing education. So she was not volunteering. She was being paid a salary that we can check as a commission and establish that she had some income. Yes, there's under the technical university, as far as I know, there was, I mean, it's not there now because the funding stopped for that entity, but while she was in university, that was the case. And the last question, so that I don't have to take the floor again, the last clarification question. We're speaking about a period of about 2 or 3 weeks, the loan you've taken from your parents, speaking of that. So if your parents didn't have the money, were there other people that you could have taken such amount from as a loan, for someone who could have proven the source of funds for an amount as big as that? Or were your parents the only solution? Thank you. In a rather indirect way, I've stated earlier as well that in fact, there was someone who I could borrow from, or I don't know how to say it, but I mean, someone to say that I've taken the money from with all of the evidence that the commission would have required. There is the brother of my of my mother, sorry. I have some cousins, I have some acquaintances, and they could have helped me out. And now, well, at that time I didn't know that this prosecutor vetting would happen, but there were people who, well, they could have had proof of their income. But considering the position that I have, I thought that it was just a vulnerability if I took loans even for a short period of time. I didn't know it was going to be for a short period of time, and just that's how things turned out. It was lucky to sell that apartment fast. Still, what makes more sense, and what made more sense, and what I thought was free from any risk, was to take that loan from parents, to borrow from my parents. But I had married godparents and acquaintances and cousins that I could have sought the money from. I could have just done that, but given that the parents were available for that, I did not look for other options. No more questions from me, Chairman. Thank you.
I think we go to Virginia then.
Mulțumesc, domnul președinte.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Cazacu, a few more clarification questions regarding the apartment that you have purchased in 2019.
La data de 18
On the 18th of October,
și ulterior, peste 20 de
and then 20 days later, you sold the apartment that you had in a different city district in Chișinău.
spuneți
Could you tell us
dacă ați avut o perioadă anterioară
if
în care erați în proces de căutare?
there was a time before that you were looking for an apartment? Because out of what you told us, given that you have two children, a daughter and a son, you needed to improve living conditions and make sure that they had their own room.
Vă mulțumesc pentru întrebare.
Thank you for the question.
Precedentă,
In the previous
în data de 7, eu am
hearings on the 7th,
nemijlociți
I've mentioned
văd careva
that as for going out and seeing some particular
prețurile existente.
properties on sale, I didn't do that. I was looking prices up on the 999 website, and there was a case when I called, but I don't know how long before I bought the apartment, but I called someone regarding an apartment that was one bus station away from the apartment that was sold. Now, the thing about the procurement of the apartment is that it happened spontaneously, and I just resolved I would buy it. Given what was offered, it was spontaneous. I was thinking 2 separate rooms in a new construction. And the money that they had, I mean, as much as I had available to pay, given the prices, given the income, given my possibilities to cover such expenses. So at that time, I was thinking about, well, I was not even dreaming about 3 rooms, 3 bedrooms, but 2. As far as I can remember, I've stated the amount 65,000 already properly renovated, 1 bus station away, and the developer was one that was regarded to be of a little bit higher level than the company that I ended up buying from. But for me to go out and look for an apartment, no. Eventually, this question, at some point, at a later point, this question had to be addressed, or this issue had to be addressed at some point in 2020. At that time, my child was 2, and afterwards, later, well, just stated as it is. Well, as my daughter was growing older, then she was 5, and then a little bit older. As she was growing older, the difference would matter more. I don't know how to say it, but I was not looking for one. It just happened by chance. By chance, I have come to know about it, and that's it all happened like that suddenly and fast, and without due precision or accuracy, so to speak, to be able to think of justifying this transaction, the source, the origin. Could you tell us how many days passed? I mean, well, not you, but the person that you've gotten in touch with, because you stated that was an acquaintance of your father's who was going to perform the indoor works in the new apartment that you purchased. Well, 18th of October you bought it. But can you remember in terms of days? So after X number of days, the indoor works began. And if they did, then what were those works about? I've explained this at the previous hearing, that as soon as I have been given the down payment, I talked to my father's friend. You mean the down payment for the apartment that you were... Yes, at the end of October, as I stated, I couldn't remember. I was not the party signing that sort of the preliminary contract or whatever that was called, but when the down payment for the apartment was given, I knew the transaction would ultimately go through. And then, in terms of days, I can't remember whether it was on that same day, but around that time, it's in that period of time that I've looked into this. I've had a discussion about the future fit-out works, the interior fit-out works. But before we moved in, some works were performed for the ceiling, toilet, windows. They were replaced. The frames were not there because the window sills or the window frames, some separate works are required. First you put a layer on, and then you have to wait for it to dry out before you add another. So since the moment works began and until we moved in on the 16th, 17th, it appears. So on the 7th of November, that was sold. Next weekend, I moved in. So a week away after the purchase. Yes, a week after the transaction has gone through. So it depends on what you mean of when the apartment was sold. Because if it's the day of the down payment, it's then. But if we mean the day of the transaction, or well, if I may, if it's the date on when we moved out, that's the 16th, 17th of November. Well, you've stated you've signed some sort of a preliminary agreement. Well, no, not me. Something was signed by the real estate agency. They've signed some sort of a preliminary agreement to make sure that I am not changing my mind about paying them what they were due. And there was enough time from you, starting with the 7th, the date of the 7th, given that the interior works were still being carried out in the new apartment. Was that enough for you to put all of your things together and then have the entire family move out and along with all of your things into the new apartment? It took us one day. But I mean moving, I mean all of the boxes with all of the things, it was a one-room apartment. There were just 3 pieces of furniture, 3 cupboards, fitted out there, and the clothes was left there. That's the first thing. And then the second, I could have stayed even with my parents, as I've stated, if we really had to. It's just that such a need did not exist. And if there's one room only, you don't even need people to help you carry things away because there isn't too much to carry. Another clarification with regards to the works, something you've mentioned at the last time of the hearing, that you've transferred in a few installments those amounts that you mentioned at that time, that you've transferred that to the friend of your father, and that person has, and that in fact the payments were given to two other people who worked in that apartment, and that person bought construction materials. And you've also mentioned that the ceiling was fixed and the windows and the interior doors. That's according to your statements in the previous hearing. And you've stated that that person had a personal discount card and that he did not show you the receipts that you could have shown us as well, shared with us as well, to confirm for us that you incurred some expenses regarding those interior fit-out works. Well, sorry, but I did not state it like that. I've stated that I wouldn't have been able anyway to submit that documentation because the procurements on the basis of the cars, I mean, there are many stores there are discount cars that the gentleman has, and I did not keep record of that, and I did not ask for that information. He told me that I have to give him that much, and then I did not really negotiate that because I did not have time. I was focused on my work, or I was focused on my day-to-day life. I've explained to you about my daughter. I was taking her to kindergarten. And then I had quite big workload that I couldn't afford looking into something else. And by the way, I forgot to mention that the tiles, that is for a certain works required. I mean, he could send me something, for instance, on some mobile phone apps, but we didn't have time for personal caprices for how things should look and be done in the interior. I mean, he has an experience providing such services. We're not meaning that you could have had any whims or whatever about the interior works. It's not that. What we are saying, we were just trying to figure out the logic behind some answers that you are providing, and specifically that you've purchased certain assets, certain goods that were more or less costly, such as doors inside the interior doors. I mean, they're not that small value assets. How many doors did you have, interior doors? 5. 5. Were you really not? I imagine that he did not buy them at the central market, so to speak, but they were purchased from a store. Were you not interested in what the cost of the doors was, to be certain, even if there was a discount with a card, thanks to the card of your father's friend, still, that was quite costly a purchase? Thanks. As for the doors, and well, by the way, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the apartment is in an old building, and there's all standard sizes, windows, doors. They all have a particular standard. And every store in the field of constructions or that are selling such items, they have them. I mean, I did not impose any requirements. I was told this is what it's going to be, and I said, okay. As for logic, I'm not sure as to how logical that is it or not? But that was the situation. I mean, he was doing that. I knew what he was capable of. He helped me out in the first apartment, and he did not make such a big profit out of working with me or for me. I just asked him to help me out because he was friends with my father. I know that my father brought him a car at some point in 2006, and they were friends. They're friends because they hail from the same place, born in the same town. And that's what it is. That's all. And the last question to clarify, if we got it right, at the last hearing, you mentioned that you've changed the windows as well for the new apartment, and then you said that they were changed. They were already changed. Did the previous former owner change them, or did you change them? At the previous hearing, you've asked me about the renovation works, and I have had the windows changed, but I meant that that person ordered them. I mean, were they the cost for the windows covered by you or by the previous owner? I've said nothing about the previous owner. I don't understand. I mean, this is all part of the money that I've reported in the rounds of questions, and they're all part of that. I just wanted to double check to make sure. Well, I've stated it last time as well. I've had some issues indeed explaining the works situation, so that's perhaps where this all came from.
I'm sorry, Virginia, were you finished?
Yes, I finished, but I think Laura have a question.
Yeah, well, I was going to go to Laura next then. Laura.
Thank you, Chris. Domnule procuror, pentru a clarifica un pic,
Prosecutor, sir,
apartamentul în care
just
stăteați
for
anterior,
clarification, the apartment that you were staying in the past. So during the discussion, you've mentioned that moving out was simple because it was just a one-room apartment. So was it like one room, or there was like one living room, one bedroom, up to 60 square meters? Is that right? Thank you. 28 square meters room, no living room. No. So the apartment was 28 square meters? No, 58 square meters is the total area. If I remember well, 14 point something, that was the kitchen, and 28, that was the bedroom, and like a hallway. So then that would be 2 rooms, a living room and the bedroom. No, the kitchen and the bedroom. A living room is something else, isn't it?
Nu știu, că e apartamentul
I
dumneavoastră.
don't know. I mean, it was your apartment. I'm just trying to make sense of it. Wait. So when you had to move out, practically you had to move from one house into another. The house that you moved out of, how many rooms were there?
O cameră de locuit,
One
dacă
in which, for living purposes, so to speak,
ca încăperi separate,
but as separate and rooms. There was the bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, and the hallway. Laura, if I may, that's like distinct spaces, right? Just make sure. Kitchen and living room like shared, and the bedroom, so that was 40 in the kitchen, living room 2 in 1, so to speak, and then 28 square meters. So still, we don't have 58 altogether.
eu poate ceva
Well, there is layout, and then the balcony as well. I mean, there is a layout,
am explicat situația.
and I've explained that.
Înțeleg.
I understand. Just let me explain what I am trying to say. When you're moving out from one place into another, you're moving the objects that you have with you as well, right? And you've stated that it was fast because there was only one room that was furnished, and that there was those places where you were keeping some objects, but still moving out of a 58 square meters apartment, not out of one single room where you were keeping some objects. Is that correct? Right. But I just moved the clothes and some items from the kitchen. And then everything was left with the other apartment that where you left the furniture in? Yes, but as for the furniture, it wasn't that big of a furniture. The bed, the cot, and the kitchen furniture, couldn't take that away because it was installed over there. And the objects that we took along, there was clothes, toys of the children, footwear, so furniture, we did not take that away. And that's why I've also stated that the cupboards were built in and that you couldn't take them out to take them away with you. And I think you've also mentioned that you had a bigger price for that apartment that you moved out of because you left it with the furniture in. Yes, that's also true. I mean, it was quite renovated. It looked quite well. Well, I don't live in Chisinau, but if I look at the prices, I see that for 58 square meters, an apartment that is renovated and with furniture, you were given about 45,000 euros, and you've paid for a larger apartment with more room, and the one that you just wanted for your family, you've paid 23,000 euros. Is there an explanation behind this major difference in prices and areas? Yes, I thank you for the question. I remember that I did not detail this. The price difference from a particular point of view, from one point of view, that can be explained by the data as well provided by the real estate agency that was already shared with the Commission. And there is a big difference between, and by the way, the sold apartment was located in a new construction, in a new building, it's just in 2013 that people started moving in there, so it was new starting that year. And the apartment that we bought, that was in an older residential block, built in 1980-something, in, Ciocana district, maybe was quite fresh considering Soviet times. It was one of the newest city districts. And then the price difference, you can look that up in the table. There's the average market value, and there is data provided by the real estate agency, and the value of apartments. The value of the apartments is equal, and not equal because the value of the price that was sold is bigger than the value of the price that than the value of the apartment that was bought.
Sumele oferite de agenție imobiliară
Even looking at the amounts of the real estate agency, in my own situation, let me have another look at it. I put down some numbers and I made some calculations on my own. So if you see the PDF file, page 109, the value of the apartment sold, 58.3 square meters, 14,362 MDL per square meter. That was the equivalent of 837,304 lei. So the apartment purchased, thinking of the 10,000 per square meters, that's 738,840 lei. So the value difference is explained because the criteria that influence the establishment of price for an apartment, well, those include give me a second.
este influențat de
That is influenced not just by the number of square meters, but also about the adjacent infrastructure. And in the previous hearing, I've mentioned that the new apartment building, all the engineering works, everything, infrastructure, stairs, elevators, 2 elevators, two elevators in that block that we were staying in, and the playgrounds for children, they were very pretty and nice, and that's not even comparable to the apartment that we bought. I've won 14 square meters, but for example, the room in the apartment, like the bedroom or the habitable space registered with the cadastre, that is 28 square meters. And the rooms that I am living in right now is 12, but they're just separate. And they're part of a standardized layout of buildings as they used to be. That's the only explanation that I can come up with. And the price, more or less, following the investments that were made, we have as a result an average value. My apartment can by no means be regarded as per the maximum limit or like a luxury asset. It is not one. It's It's good to have explanations repeated over again because we can have a better understanding of your point of view. We in Bucharest too have newer apartments, older apartments, but those that are most sought are those built between 1978 after the earthquake and until 1986-87. So that's why it's not necessarily that a new apartment it's not necessarily the case that a new apartment is going to be better, for instance, and sold for much more compared to an apartment built back in the 80s. Now, you've mentioned a value of 668,000 lei, if I've gotten you right, but the value that you have paid, the price that you paid, is much under that value. Isn't that right? Yes. So I'm just trying to make sense. How bad was that apartment that such a discount was possible of 1/3 of the cost, that is? Thank you very much for addressing this, which is precisely why I said that I've invested into that apartment. And those investments, thanks to those investments, that apartment looked like an apartment that would fall into like an average apartment group. The apartment, given that I've replaced the windows, the interior doors, the toilet, the pipelines, I've already mentioned that in the previous hearing, that's what made it happen. This is my explanation as to that difference in terms of price. Can you remind us, just briefly, how much you spent on the interior works, on renovation? Well, I did not keep strict records, but about 200,000 lei, as it comes out of my own calculations. And these are the amounts that I've indicated, that I've stated during the rounds of questions and at the hearing. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from panel members? I have one question, Mr. Cazacu. At the beginning of the hearing, I'm just a little bit, if you could clarify for me, your father bought cars in Germany, drove them to Moldova, and sold them in Moldova. And if I recall, and I may have heard it incorrectly, you said that then he was able to save all of that money that he sold the cars for in Moldova. Did I hear that correctly?
Potentially, I might have not expressed myself in the best way. What I meant is that he was saving on the money he would have otherwise had to spend coming back. I mean, he had luggage. He would have to pay for a bus or for some vehicle. So he had to come himself, pay for himself, and all the tools that he was bringing, he had to pay for that luggage as well. And that's what I meant. And then all the road expenses, he would save that. He would not have to spend that. He would not have to pay for that if he was bringing cars.
Where did the money come from to buy the cars?
Well, I've explained that he was working there for 2-3 months. And with the money that he would earn, he would buy the vehicles. Out of my explanations, you can see the value of the cars. They're not very expensive. Most of them match the approximate amount that he was earning. And he also needed to set aside some money as well in order to pay for the customs duties. But that he was paying for the cars with the money he was earning in Germany. He was not taking money from Moldova to Germany, but he was paying for the cars with money earned in Germany.
Thank you. Yeah, your answer is clear. Are there any other questions for the subject at this point? And then, Mr. Cazacu, I think we're at the end of that portion of the hearing, and it's your opportunity to make a closing statement to the Commission.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. In closing, I would like to express my hope that I was clear enough about all of the doubts that the Commission had. Once more, I would like to express my appreciation for the work that the Commission does. And since the festive part of the year is ahead, I wish everyone Merry Christmas.
All right. I want to thank you for your participation in this evaluation process and at this hearing today. And the Commission will now deliberate on the matter, and the hearing is closed.